All right, so we got some more Intel news here. Just because Intel's performing well this time around doesn't mean it's free from drama and early adopter issues and all that. So today we're going to talk about some of the latest news to hit the Intel launch, specifically regarding gaming and the fact that depending on what platform you're on, OS, games you want to play, chances are you may not even be able to. This video is sponsored by Micro Center and their custom PC builder. Use a custom PC builder to plan your next build, and when parts are added to your cart and in-store pickup is selected, you have the option for Micro Center technician to fully build your PC for an extra fee. And if the order is placed at least 4 hours before closing, you can enjoy your new PC the very same day. Get the best prices and parts selection at any of Micro Center's 25 locations across the United States. And right now, new customers can get a free 240 gigabyte SSD while supplies last, in-store only, and limit one per email. To see everything that Micro Center has to offer and to learn more about this limited time SSD giveaway, click the link in the description below. So this is being reported on by quite a few outlets, like large outlets too, like PC Gamer, PC Mag. They're talking about this. I haven't seen a whole lot of videos about this yet. There might be some out there, but this one's kind of a big issue. So on the high level, the way that the hybrid CPU works is it's like two different CPUs that are on the same substrate that the Windows 11 scheduler, Windows 10 doesn't schedule properly on 12th gen, is able to hand off high priority and low priority tasks to the different CPUs and E-cores and P-cores to keep things efficient and independent from being impacted with the type of workloads that you're doing. So you can have a low-end workload on the E-cores and a high-end workload on the P-cores, and you don't have any sort of crosstalk or slowdown between the two CPUs. The problem with that particular design is it's not something that's widely this is kind of new for Intel. They've done this before, but it was never widely adopted. It was only on like thin and light, like low profile type laptops where they did this. So it wasn't a big concern. Now that they're doing this on desktop, it's starting to become noticed that some of the third-party software that games specifically utilize is starting to have a hard time figuring out how to handle the hybrid CPU architecture. Now we're going to be talking specifically about Denuvo. Denuvo is a third-party piece of anti-piracy software that a lot of the game developers and studios utilize to keep their games from being copied and pirated and all that sort of stuff. But it's like a DRM, essentially. It's very similar to how HDMI cables and online streaming services, Blu-ray players and such will use HDCP to encrypt the signal through the HDMI cable to keep from being able to view pirated piece of software, or a pirated movie, I should say, or show, or whatever. If you've ever had an HDCP error with your TV, which I have, you'll know exactly how frustrating it can be when you're doing everything right. You own the movie you're trying to watch. You own the TV and the Blu-ray player and the cable, and suddenly you go to hit play and you get a menu, like a pop-up on your screen that says HDCP protected content, yada, yada, yada. So that means something went wrong between the player and the viewer with that cable that says, you can't watch this, you're trying to pirate it, you're a terrible human being. And you're like, what did I do? I own all this. I've actually experienced this. It was specifically with an LG OLED TV, but I digress. This is the same sort of thing. You build your 12th gen CPU, or your 12th gen system, you're on your Windows platform, whether it be Windows 10 or Windows 11, you start playing your game, and suddenly it crashes. Not an error that pops up that says, hey, you're a piece of crap pirate, it's just a crash to desktop. And the issue here is the fact that Denuvo itself is not able to decipher what the heck the hybrid CPU is. And so what will happen here is you can launch the game, and it'll more than likely launch on a P-core. Because lots of other things are happening in the system, that game might momentarily be handed off to the E-core or the world thread and come back. It's that hardware switching that trips Denuvo to have some sort of an anti-piracy protection, because it has to do with the licensing of suddenly handing off to another piece of hardware and then coming back real fast, or switching at all, that has these random crashes. Now, the reports of people that have been experiencing this have said that it happens sometimes instantly, some games won't even launch, or it happens hours into gameplay. It's really difficult to try and decipher exactly what's causing these problems. Now, the problem is compounded by the fact that you'll have certain games affected on Windows 10 that are not affected on Windows 11, and certain games that are affected only on Windows 10. Now, Intel has basically put out a statement saying that they are aware of this particular problem, that they are working with Denuvo, and they are working with the motherboard manufacturers to come up with a solution to this problem. Now, this is the part usually where people will start click-clacking and bleep-blooping down in the comments, this is why Intel sucks. Intel sucks, ha 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 ha. And to that I would say, do any of you Ryzen adopters remember the Destiny 2 problem? This is an issue about early adoption. It's a new piece of hardware that software is not really, a lot of software pieces are not written to understand how to utilize this, which leads to the bleeding edge. They call it bleeding edge for a reason. Not because it's razor thin on how many people are adopting this, it's the fact that it's literally cutting you because of the fact that the experiences sometimes suck when you adopt something that is brand spanking new. Think of it as those people that run out and buy the very first model of a complete refresh of a car, and you're guaranteed to be the test mules when it comes to the first models, and you end up having a recall list longer than this list of games I'm about to tell you when it comes to the games that are affected by this. First of all, let's talk about the Intel statement. They said, we are aware of a DRM issue with Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Now, the reason why they're mentioning Valhalla is because that was one of the big titles that was affected by this. Don't just assume that these are indie titles or mid-range titles. AAA titles are on here too. Here's what they're saying. We're aware of a DRM issue with Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and we are working with the game publisher on a fix. So they're speaking specifically to the Valhalla issue, but this is obviously more widespread than that. Select games and titles. It's funny, the marketing speak on here, select games and titles, it's just funny how they say that. Select games and titles have had issues running on 12th gen core platforms due to a DRM issue, now repeating themselves. These issues have been addressed via game patches and OS updates for most games on Windows 11. Now this is where Intel owns a huge part of this problem. There's another line to this, but I want to preface this with something here. Phil and I were talking about this before this shoot, and Phil was very adamant. Denuvo. Denuvo sucks. Denuvo is terrible. It takes like up to 10% performance hit by having Denuvo. This is Denuvo's problem. I said yes. This next sentence makes it Intel's problem because Windows 10 updates will begin next year. If you don't want to update to Windows 11, and you're on 12th gen, and you play any of these titles that are affected by Windows 10, you can expect to be hung out to dry until the Microsoft team thinks you are worthy of their time to patch their old OS. And I think that's complete bullcrap right there. That there's absolutely zero reason that they would have to push Windows 10 out months to even start the patching effect for any reason other than they want to force you to adopt Windows 11 now. Just like they did with Windows 8 when people didn't want to come off 7, and just like they wanted to do with Windows 10 when people didn't want to come off of Windows 8. This is just the new, this is the sequel to the everlasting, never-ending drama between Microsoft forcing updates on people that just don't want to. But anyway, we do have a list of apparently 32 games that are affected by this. So let's talk about the games that are affected in Windows 11. And there is a workaround for this. We'll talk about that here at the end. Right now my list is not loading. This is coming from Intel's own website. I'll put a link to it down in the description below, if I remember. But anyway, list of games affected by DRM issue with Windows 12th gen core processors for Windows 11 and Windows 10. R, trademark, asterisks, all the crap. For Windows 11 effects, then there's some bold titles on here which mean that they've already been patched or in the process of being patched or being fixed literally with the next update. Anthem, Bravely Default 2, Fishing Sim World, Football Manager 2019, Football Manager Touch 20. There's actually a touch football game? Okay, whatever. Football Manager 2020, Football Manager Touch 2020, so 19 and 2020 of those. Legend of Mana, Mortal Kombat 11, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2, and Warhammer 1. Titles that are still broken: Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Far Cry Primal, Fern Bus Simulator, For Honor, Lost in Random, Madden 22, Maneater. You hear that, Nick? Maneater. Nick plays Maneater. Need for Speed, Hot for Spute, Pre-Mastered, Sea of Solitude, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, Tourist Bus Simulator, which I'm gonna be honest, this list piqued my interest. What is Tourist Bus? Do they scream when you're crashing? Anyway, and Maneater listed again. So I don't know, they listed it twice in their list, so that already shows you the amount of due diligence that Intel has in their own list making, let alone bug fixing. For the Windows 10, Ace Combat 7, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Assassin's Creed Origins, Code Vein, eFootball 2021, F1 2019, Far Cry New Dawn, FIFA 19, FIFA 20, Football Manager 2021, Football Manager Touch 2021, Ghost Recon Breakpoint, Ghost Recon's Wildlands, Immortals, Phoenix Rising, Just Cause 4, Life is Strange 2, Madden 21, Monopoly Plus, Need for Speed Heat, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Shinobi Striker, Soul Calibur 6, Starlink, Team Sonic Racing, Total War Saga 3 Kingdoms, Train Sim World 2, and Wolfenstein Youngblood. So you can see there are major titles on this list. And it's funny because we kind of knew something was up, and we've experienced this every time there was a major platform launch. Every version of Ryzen has experienced, not to this degree, this is pretty massive, but every version of Ryzen has experienced games that wouldn't launch or games that crash. Usually it's just a game just straight up wouldn't launch, period. That's what Destiny 2 was doing. We could not get 3D Mark to launch on Windows 10, but it launches fine on Windows 11. In fact, the launcher would crash. So we don't know, that's not really a Denuvo thing, because Denuvo's not in 3D Mark, but it showed us there's something weird happening with the hardware versus the OS. I don't know if it was a scheduler. So this is just a informational piece to kind of give you an idea of what's happening here. There is a workaround. The problem is Intel has created a reference spec workaround, but it's up to the motherboard manufacturers to actually implement this, and it's being referred to as the scroll lock workaround. So what that essentially means is that you can go into your BIOS and you can enable what's considered a gaming compatibility mode or gaming legacy mode by using the scroll lock button in your OS. The problem is when PC Mag and PC Gamer and all these other, there's a few other publications that have reached out to these motherboard manufacturers, because what they found was that they were trying to do this function, but they couldn't find it in the BIOS. So like, where the heck is this thing? And the responses were, we're working on it. It's coming in a future BIOS. Now, that's not abnormal, right? These are brand new motherboards. They're gonna get probably a lot of BIOS support and update right at the start. Optimization improvements, probably memory compatibility improvements, general speed ups, bug fixes, that kind of stuff. Like, you'll find the first couple of months of a new platform, it's just like, dude, it's like every week there's new BIOS coming out. So it's already scary, because to enable the workaround is going to also require the super scary BIOS update of updating your motherboard. I mean, I've already showed in a video recently with building a computer with my daughter how that can go terribly wrong through no wrongdoing of the end user. We had our BIOS completely break itself on its own. And so that's already super sketch and scary. That someone that maybe is not super experienced having to go in there and start plucking around in their BIOS is gonna be the fix during the workaround for the legacy mode enabling. But yeah, they couldn't get any of this to work. And all the motherboard manufacturers basically came back and said, yeah, we're working on it. It doesn't exist yet. They were given the Intel reference spec on how to make it work. They have to implement it. BIOS test, bug test, make sure nothing else is gonna break in the BIOS that's gonna break your system, then release it. So you've got Intel working on this, you've got Microsoft working on this, you got the motherboard manufacturers working on this, and you better pray to God they're all talking to each other. That way, anyone that's ever worked in development knows how one bug fix can lead to 3 more bugs. We've all experienced this. So, more bad news for Windows 12. Windows 12? God, no, please. We're not ready. More bad. Might as well just call it Windows 12. The collaboration between Intel and Microsoft on this one is a little bit dirty, in my opinion. But moving on, more bad news for 12th gen Intel. The performance is great. They just have to work out these freaking bugs and maybe make it not take the power of a small nuclear power plant to run it. So, all right guys, sound off down below. Have you been affected by this? Did you adopt Windows 11 or 10 and stay on 10? Did you get 12th gen? Have you noticed any other weirdness happening with your system? If you actually have this stuff and you have first-hand experience, not I heard on Reddit through my cousin's roommate who also is on Reddit, that heard from another Redditor that he doesn't follow that this happened. We don't care about any of that. Sound off in the comments below. Link to the affected games and the Intel ARC, whatever it's called, their website for support is down below. And guys, we will see you in the next one. Unless, of course, your YouTube won't launch because of Denuvo.